Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, recently Mugabe was dethroned, and I'm saying it in a way of dethroned because Mugabe had been there for roughly 30 more years. I think it was 30 some odd years. He's 92. Yeah. Look, Mugabe being deposed in Zimbabwe brings up a lot of interesting historical contradictions and problems. This kind of moral quagmire where you end up with like there's no right, or at the very least right is extraordinarily difficult to find. And I think you find that right ends up being just outcome. Everybody is morally gray at that point. Usually, my problem with most of the people who are recounting the story, it only goes back. They only take it from the time Mugabe took office. What about before Mugabe took office? Why? What took place before? So we're talking about pre-colonial Africa at this point, or colonial Africa. Brits, long story short, I put the links at the bottom. A company in Britain sent out an expedition to that particular part of the world. That eventually comes to Zimbabwe, but they called it something else, Rhodesia's. And they, with blood and sword and gun, like every other time, they essentially stole the land. They stole the resources of that land, and they divided it up mainly to the whites themselves. That's what took place. That's flat fact. That's colonialism. They divvied the land up in a way that had overwhelmingly advantaged the whites. Rhodesians, whatever they call, as they call themselves. Now, there were uprisings in some of the other colonies. One of the guys in the British colony, I think his name was Ian Smith, has declared, we are now an independent nation. Now, part of the reason him doing this is because they could instantiate their gains. This is what we were able to achieve from this system where we raped and pillaged and killed. This is what we were able to steal in this case. Now we're going to instantiate our gains by saying we're no longer connected to Britain and we're a solitary nation. Yes, we did it. That's great. That's great for fucking you. You were able to get all that, however, by stealing it from the people who were there prior. That doesn't seem fair to me. That doesn't seem fair at all. Within this context, this is where Mugabe comes in. Because he was able to marshal a force of Africans, in a sense, and just getting people to support his cause to win, to take political power. And in taking political power, he went on a redistribution campaign of his own, redistributing that land back to the people who owned it prior. Now, the whites, in this case, were completely aghast by this. Oh, you're taking your land back. Yes, he took his land back. They took their land back. Markets crumbled. Markets start to punish Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe dollar, or whatever they call their particular currency, had 600 million% interest. Mugabe stayed in Africa, using threats and violence and everything else in order to maintain his power in that country. The military has asked him to finally step aside, and they're giving him a golden parachute as he steps aside. Mugabe is going to make, let's see, the ousted president was promised that his salary would continue to be paid for his life. Let's see. Robert Mugabe and his wife will receive a golden handshake worth many millions of dollars as part of a negotiated deal, to resign for the resignation of the aiding autocrat last week. The exact sum to be paid former president and his wife, Grace, is still unclear. The one senior ruling party official with direct knowledge of the agreement said the total would be not less than $10 million. The official said that Mugabe, who has been granted immunity from prosecution and guaranteed that no action will be taken against his family extensive business interests, will receive a cash payment of $5 million immediately, with more paid in coming months. The 93-year-old's $150,000 salary will also be paid until his death. The 52-year-old First Lady, reviled for her extravagance and greed, will receive half that amount for the rest of her life. Mugabe's 37-year rule left Zimbabwe with a worthless currency, massive debts, and impoverished population with estimated unemployment rate more than 80%. Roads are rutted, many rural communities have no electricity, education is basic, and healthcare almost non-existent. A life expectancy of 60 is one of the lowest in the world. So that's the Guardian. That's the Guardian. Zimbabwe is in complete fuckery. Yeah, and they're true. They're right. But we need to look at history from a context longer than just 30 years. And you kind of ask this question of... Look, this brings up stuff with America also, right? I mean, America was murder, genocide, complete genocide of the Native American population. Put another bit of the population in slavery for X number of hundreds of years. Essentially grew wealth based off the backs of that population that they enslaved and on the country and the grounds of the population that they murdered. America just doesn't talk about it. Zimbabwe in this case is forced to some degree to confront it just because the complaint, what's causing Zimbabwe to have this particular shittiness, is that he rebelled against the colonial rulers. Ultimately, he was punished for trying to rewrite something that was wrong. This is hard to find the right answer to this. I mean, ultimately, you find yourself in a situation of people will say, well, yeah, it's been 50, 60 years, man. You should just get over it. We've gotten these gains. The world is good. Why are you complaining? And why are you bitching? Why are you bitching? Why are you complaining? The moment that he does something to rectify something that was that was outright utter murder and theft, rectifying that, he's punished. He's punished. Now, I'm not saying Mugabe was a good guy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they were in this situation where there was massive amounts of theft that led to the impoverishment of one demographic in that country, with a white demographic that had benefited from that path being okay with the way things were. If the white demographic wasn't willing to be fair and acknowledge that we stole this, then what was the black demographic to do? Is that not the fair question to ask? Is that not the fair question? The moment that you start asking this question of, is it fair that the white demographic stole that land? Is it fair that they were able to rape that country of their resources? Is it fair that they were able to instantiate their gains? Well, like, it becomes this thing of, this has become far morally less clear. If your perspective of the world goes beyond just 30 years, and if you understand that the poverty that was in that country dealing and concerning with the blacks of that country, in many respects can be attributed to Brits stealing resources and disenfranchising the blacks in that country, then Mugabe becomes a little bit shade of gray. He becomes a shade of gray. Was the white demographic ever going to give the black demographic their due? If that answer is no, then what is the black demographic to do? And playing politics on this playing field of, look, you've stolen and raped this land. Now we're going to pretend like this is just regular politics. How can we pretend like this is regular politics when we have a memory, a clear memory of just earlier you raping and stealing from this country? How do you balance those scales when you've stolen everything and now you want to play on the playing field that you yourself have created? Mugabe is gray. He's gray. He becomes more gray in a sense. Yes, Mugabe should have did better for that country. And this is where you get into this thing of, could Mugabe have done? What was their path for Mugabe to have gone that would have, A, done right by the people of that country, meaning the Africans, and B, not send that country into this spiraling pit of shittiness. What's that answer? From this human gut level, it's, I want to make things even. I want to make things even as brutally and fast as possible. That's this human thing of fairness. This seems blisteringly unfair to me. I want to right these scales. Then there's this other aspect of, yes, but if you right these scales, XYZ is going to take place. Is there a way for you to right these scales without sending everything into turmoil? What if the answer is no? And that becomes immensely unsatisfying. Mugabe is gray. Mugabe is gray. At least from my perspective. I don't think it's this clear-cut thing of Mugabe as a fucking maniac and he's a horrible person, etc., etc., etc. Mugabe could have went the way of Mandela. Yes, that's true. He could have been this guy who tried to balance the scales in a way that wasn't necessarily as vulgar and violent, while at the same time advantaging himself immensely. Yes, he could have been a better and decent person. Going through suffering does not make you a better person. It does not make you a decent person. And the traits that he picked up from the Brits, I would imagine he understood that, hey, violence works. That's the first part. And repression works. That's the second. Yes, he should have been better. He should have been different. But any analysis of what takes place in that situation has to have more context and has to take into account or colonialism. It has to. Mugabe doesn't even come to fruition until this thing of this colonialism, this break in this colonialism, this colonialist expansion. Yeah, I'm going to put the links at the bottom to the articles. But yeah, Mugabe comes across as being great to me. I wish he would have been better, yes. But again, how he came to fruition had everything to do with colonial expansion by Britain. All of these things are repercussions. It's almost like waves going through it based on the behaviors of other people, meaning a capitalistic impulse comes in. That capitalistic impulse sets up an enterprise, stealing land and resources from a country. Oh, they made it a country, but whatever. Stealing land and resources from an area. The recoil from that, the pushback against that, creates a Mugabe. Now, yes, there's an aspect of Mugabe that's Mugabe, but his environment, he is not inextricable from his environment. What he learned, all of these things were drilled into this person. Ended up creating a Mugabe. Now, in a similar situation, you had Mandela to show the other scenario, the other option in this case. But the cause of this was colonial expansion. The cause of this was colonial expansion. The quandary in and of itself was created by colonial expansion. And if there's a right answer to it, I don't know what it is. Now you may say Mandela was the closest to that right answer, being this complete nonviolent, this virulent thing of nonviolence. I would agree with you. I would agree with you. I would say, if you remember, Mandela wasn't always nonviolent. So that's the first point. But in the way that he melded the unrighteousness and the unfairness with this thing of, look, we need to move the society forward. I don't know of a better option or a better scenario. The guy who is in there now, however, has said he's going to pay back the colonialists. That is fucking insane. I'm sorry, that's fucking insane. I will take a position on that one. That's fucking insane. These guys steal your land and steal your property. Somebody comes along and tries to take that land and give that land and property back. And your response to this is, look, I'm sorry, colonialists, that we took back our land and property. I am going to remunerate you for the land and property that you stole originally from us. I understand you're trying to get yourself out of a rut. America in no way has ever given land and property back to Native Americans. In fact, at Standing Rock, they continue to steal that land and property. The perspective of many of the nations across the world is that once you take it, it's yours, you move forward from there. I don't understand why you as an African nation is not taking that particular perspective. Mugabe is gone. We're opening up a new lease on things. We're moving forward. Yes, we're keeping the land, but we're moving forward. We're moving forward. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope this wasn't too scattered. The Zimbabwe thing is interesting because it brings up this thing on America. Honestly, that's. I mean, I don't have a choice but to think of it that way. And are we really okay with you steal something, you just don't talk about it, and you move forward? The problems. And yes, I'm moving to America for a moment. Many of the problems. We're talking about these clashes of races and everything else. All of this, a lot of this, boils down to people not necessarily want to own up to their history. We should have American history. I agree with James Baldwin on this. We should have white American history because it completely ignores realities. It's like you had one class that was literally a slave class, and at a certain point you just said, okay, mulligan, move forward. Move forward. The wealth that was created on the backs of those people. Move forward. Move forward. I, as a white man, had nothing to do with those people doing that. Yes, I was advantaged by it. Fair enough. But I have nothing to do with it. As if there is a complete disconnect between history at some point. Like there was a break in history. There was a break in history. There was something that took place in the past that in no way affects the present reality. That's fucking amazing to me. But that's the argument that's often made. I think that's an insane argument. Your government, the people in this country, advantaged themselves magnificently off the backs of the slaves, but also off the land that they stole from the group that was already here. It is difficult to talk about Zimbabwe without having the conversation about America. I'm sorry, it just is. Yes, you bring up South Africa also because Mandela took a different tact, but I'm just saying we should also have the conversation about the United States and the issues of race, the issues of poverty, and everything else that can be directly related and attributed to the history in this country. Whether you want to talk about slavery, whether you want to talk about Reconstruction, whether you want to talk about 60s and the way that African Americans have been disenfranchised from certain positions, all those things are ignored. Those things are completely ignored. So yeah, hell, not even getting on this thing of prisons and the structural edifice that's constructed in order to put black bodies in prison cages. I've strayed away from the original point. The Zimbabwe thing is fascinating to me. Mugabe is great. He's morally great to me. He should have been better. Yes, he should have been absolutely better for Zimbabwe. Absolutely yes. He should have taken a different tack. That answer is absolutely yes. Taking that land from whites in order to redistribute to blacks after the whites had already stolen that land from the blacks in the first place. Is there a way to get a certain level of fairness in your society or to balance those scales? I don't know how you balance those scales. And we're the white owners, we're the white landowners, going to be on board for trying to actually balance those scales. I don't know that to be true either. This is morally great to me. I don't know an answer. So I will leave it at that. Yes, I can take positions of saying, I don't know. At the very least, I know how I feel about it. Like looking at it from just this kind of overarching context of, well, you guys stole that land from those people should be able to get their land back. Or those people should be handsomely remunerated for what you stole. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I do agree with that wholeheartedly. Was there a way to balance the scales in a way that didn't necessarily cause Zimbabwe to fall in such turmoil? I don't know. Any deal that you made is going to be to some degree beneficial or more beneficial to the white side. I would think they have the wealth, they have the cash, they have the money. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I have to read up more on Zimbabwe to understand a little bit more context. But right now, the way it looks, yeah, Mugabe is somewhat gray. Mugabe, and I'm saying gray in the sense of what he did in regards to trying to redistribute land. Once he gets into that office, yeah, there's problems. There's immense problems. He should have been a better person in this case. Yeah, wholeheartedly, yes. Wholeheartedly, yes. I mean, he's living high off the hog while the rest of the population is living in turmoil. That is immensely problematic. He didn't know what he was doing. Or he didn't care. One or the other. It was one or the other. And if it was a situation where he just didn't care and he just wanted to advantage himself immensely, then yes, Mugabe, it's not morally gray anymore. It's not morally gray. At that point, he's just using this idea of colonialism for his own ends. So yes, I guess as I talk, my perspective of this is changing. I have to look at this as shades. So in one shade, you have this thing of redistributing land back to the people who had the land originally. Yeah, fair enough. I say gray in that case, not because I'm against the redistributed land, more so because of the reaction, what took place to Zimbabwe after that was done. Mugabe, after that, however, yeah, he has immense problems. I'm sorry, he has immense problems. And it seems like he was only doing the stuff to advantage himself, using this idea of colonialism as this kind of political catch term or catchphrase. Hey, look at what I did. Don't you love me? Look at what I did. What have you done for me lately? And were you functioning at the best or for the best of the rest of the country? I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I have a hard time looking at Zimbabwe and saying the answer is yes. So, I don't live in Zimbabwe. I don't know everything about the story itself. So fair enough. What I do know is any conversation about Mugabe has to take place or has to start at the very least from colonialism and what took place in colonialism and how Mugabe was a reaction to that colonialism. Afterwards, yeah, he started using it as a political trick. Beforehand, yeah, he had some legitimacy in regards to what he was saying for the colonialism thing. So, I hope this is I hope this is not too scattered. But I'm going to leave it because I don't want to do it multiple times. And I do think what I hit upon is right. Yeah, I think what I hit upon is right. In the sense of this thing of, you can have multiple stories in history and multiple stories can be true at the exact same time. Mugabe, yes, just kind of fighting back against this colonialism thing. Mugabe, yes, advantaged himself handsomely. Yes, violent. Yes, used repression tactics that he might have gotten from Britain itself. Yes, those things are all true. That's why I said gray. There were some things that I may agree with from a high level point of view, but it always kind of boils down to what does this happen or what does this mean in real world terms. There are things I may even agree with from an emotional and gut level. That's also true. That's also true. But what are you doing in that office? What do you actually represent, not what you're telling me? I think those things hold whether you're in Africa or whether you're in America. And it's a hard case to make. It's a hard case to make that Mugabe wasn't just using this for politics. So I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks guys.